In this video, I want to talk about why many developers are stuck in dead-end jobs. And I want to give you some tips on how to kind of overcome a situation if you do feel like you are stuck. But sometimes I get the question of like, I've been at this company, I'm not really growing, not really getting the mentorship that I need, and I feel stuck and I feel like I'm not qualified for other positions. And I hate when people end up in that position. You know, those kind of positions are always fixable, but I want you to try to identify some of this stuff if you feel like it's happening at your current dev job. So the very first thing is lack of continuous learning and skill development. Now, I think with some tenure at a company, if you are essentially just like owning a part of an application that you've worked on for several years and you're not really giving a lot or given a lot of other responsibilities, other parts of the app to work on, just something that challenges you in a way that you that's different than what you've been doing for the past 6 months, you know, because sometimes it's just easy to get locked into a certain part of the app, working with the same tools over and over and over, day after day after day. And it's easy to get comfortable with that, right? It's a stress-free, well, I shouldn't say stress-free, but it's low stress. You know what you're doing. You can push out features. You know the code base. You can estimate times very easily for different stakeholders, right? But there comes to a point where some companies don't really, they're not pushing you towards kind of a more leadership role or a more senior position or to have other or more complex responsibilities. And you get this in the startup world a lot. I would argue that this video is probably for a lot of people in the startup world where they kind of just need you to continue fleshing out the app and continue fleshing out features that customers want to bring revenue in or try to increase revenue. And you just get comfortable after a while, right? This is normal in the startup world. And you have to realize, like, sometimes when you start getting comfortable, you have to take that initiative outside of the opportunities work is giving you. That might even mean building a personal project, exploring a different technology, because sometimes you get trapped in a certain technology. And I hate to see when developers want to go into more complex things and they get stuck just working with WordPress and changing content or like on a low code system where they're not really diving heavily into programming. It's just a little bit of logic with low code. You can get stuck in these situations. And if the company isn't giving you opportunities to get out of them, you have to take those opportunities outside of your current work. And you could do that through personal projects. I highly, highly recommend every developer work on a personal project on the side. Some people don't want to hear it. Some people don't want to make time for it. But this is what I've heard from a lot of other hiring managers as well, because not only will you be able to challenge yourself in different ways that you don't get at that current position, but it ignites that passion again. Like just, man, I don't know about you, but just coding the same thing, working on the same piece of the app over and over and over, it can get boring and it's not that challenging. And you know, I'm going off of someone else's conventions and I'm in their code base, building up their dream. Like, that's how burnout happens for me. I don't know about you, but that just doing that for years and years and years just sounds exhausting. I find that when I do feel a little burned out from work, just dipping into a personal project where I don't have restrictions, where I can do whatever the fuck I want to do, build whatever the fuck I want to build, and that thing could make me money down the road. That thing, I could gain a user base, or if I wanted to, you know, build in public and gain an audience around it. There's a lot I could do with building this personal project. I could also challenge myself with new technologies that I don't get to at work. You might have to do that. But I would start with trying to push for taking more ownership, more responsibility at your current company. And sometimes you need to prove yourself. And that might mean working some extra hours to dip in or fix some like really hard to fix bugs that have been left in the dust for a while because it's not feature work and, you know, it's not what shareholders want. And taking that ownership to fix some more complex problems, to show that you can do that, you're resourceful enough to do that on your own, and you want to take that initiative, sometimes that's all that you need to signal to your hiring manager or whoever that, like, I'm ready for more responsibility. If you're doing the same thing over and over and over, expect the same results, and you're probably going to get locked into whatever tech stack, whatever language, whatever problems you're trying to solve, and you're not really going to branch out of that. So what I'm trying to say is, don't expect your hiring manager to force you to significantly grow, because sometimes they just want you to do the job, and they're happy with that. You have to look out for yourself here. Another thing is poor networking and industry connections. A lot of developers do not take the time out to connect with other developers in the industry. It is, it can be exhausting doing that, but it could also be really fun. Try putting yourself at a conference. Try going to networking meetups. Try giving back to the developer community and mentoring in some sort of capacity. It's I notice like a lot of professional developers don't take the time to really build out their connections. And, if these recent years haven't been proof enough for you, I don't know what is. Like, you don't have job security. Job security is an illusion. I feel like most people realize that, but I think most people just need to put themselves out there in the dev world and not just be locked into their dev position, because you can lose that dev position at any time. And I am telling you, when you do, or if you do get laid off and you have those connections and you've built up a presence in the dev world, you are the developer that isn't afraid of what happens next, right? You are not the developer that's now having to do the slow process of networking and building up meaningful connections to be able to propel yourself in your career after that layoff. So don't start building up those connections once you finally get fired or laid off. This can take 6 months. This can take a year. This can take 2 years. This can take a long time, depending on how much initiative you have to really test your social skills and put yourself out there in uncomfortable social situations to meet other people, meet other developers, to post on LinkedIn, to post on Twitter, your developer thoughts, create content on YouTube, create a podcast. Like, there are a lot of different opportunities out there to put yourself out there, get attention, get eyeballs on what you're saying, get people to care about what you have to say, and build those meaningful connections through that. Whether it's content or it's going to conferences or meetups, but it takes time to do that. Don't expect that to happen right after you get laid off. That can take a lot longer than what people think. And so it's just one of those situations where you can start now, and you could just start by, going to a meetup, going to a very popular meetup and talking to one person at that meetup. But start now. Please do that. And don't necessarily trust that your hiring manager is going to give you a good reference, because even if they do give you that reference, that might come in handy when they're checking for references when they've mostly already decided that you're a good fit. But if your hiring manager doesn't have their own massive connections to put you out there if you get laid off, and a lot of other people are probably going to be laid off as well in that case, like, so who do they prioritize? I wouldn't depend on references like that. References come in handy for validation when the company already vibes with you, when they already kind of validated your skill level as well. It can help for kind of initial transitions or into HR conversations, but they need to have their own connections to be able to do that, and they need to be able to personally recommend you. So it's great when that can happen. Just don't depend on it. Take that initiative outside of your current job to dive deeper and just put yourself out there in the dev industry. Do it early, do it now. And also a third thing is, I think a lot of developers they get comfortable, right? It's really easy to be comfortable in a routine. A lot of people don't like change. And I don't really enjoy the interview process. I don't know about you, but I don't. I don't enjoy the job search process. I enjoy the job. I enjoy coding. But I think it's natural for us to not see a future where we don't hold our current job, right? If things are going good with our job, I think it's very natural for us to kind of just live in our little bubble at that job and try to do as good of a job as we possibly can be with that specific job. It's a narrow focus. It's easy to conceptualize. It's easy to visualize what I need to do for this specific job. It's very scary. It's very sometimes overwhelming to think, well, if I don't have this job, am I really going to be able to perform at other jobs? Like, I know this job, but so many other dev positions are way different, right? They can be, depending on the industry, the company, the team, the stack. I don't even know if I'm going to be marketable. Like, I know what to do with this job, but this is a pretty unique scenario that I'm in. Am I going to be marketable? And that's a scary feeling, because you're giving so much power to that employer by putting all of your eggs in that basket and just focusing on trying to up your skill and make your boss happy in that specific niche job. It's very scary to think about, like, what could happen if I try to change things up. It's very scary to think about what could happen if I aim for something better, harder, more challenging, where I might not be able to hit the ground running as fast as I'd like to. Maybe I don't hit the ground running as fast as they would prefer that oh my God. Maybe I hit the ground running just much slower than what the expectations are of that employer. I promise you, no cuts, no edits. We keep going. I'm doing this for 28 videos straight. So it's easy to have all of this anxious thinking that continues to suppress you into the little comfortable bubble that you have formed in this job. And I just hope I don't get fired. But, as we talked about, job security is an illusion. And maybe you don't want to think about this, but I would really gain the mindset of, like, it's not if I'm going to get fired, it's when. Prepare for the worst. Expect yourself to get fired. Expect yourself to get laid off. Then what, right? You're going to have to force yourself to adapt to a very uncomfortable situation. You're going to have to force yourself to possibly address that maybe you haven't been staying up to date with the most marketable technologies. Maybe you haven't been getting proper code reviews and good mentorship at a company to have you significantly grow. Like, maybe you were given a senior title 1 year into your company, when in reality, they just did that to keep you. And if you go to other companies and try to apply for senior positions, you're probably not going to be looked at as a senior developer. You're not even going to be close, right? Then what, right? Then you got to address the uncomfortable situation. Like, maybe I'm not a senior developer. Maybe I got to check my ego and go to kind of a more junior position. I've only been in this industry for 1 year, and that's uncomfortable. But I want you to try to face the uncomfortable with, I guess, the uncomfortable possibility that maybe you could do way better than what you are now. Maybe you can get into a much more challenging position. Maybe you can get into a much higher paying position. And people do this when they bounce to a different company that is a better fit, a better challenge for them, because they truly are pushing themselves. They're making sure that they don't get comfortable in their situation. They're working on a personal project on the side. They're learning that marketable technology on the side. They're getting outside of WordPress if they don't want to work with WordPress. Or maybe you do. Maybe you want to go into agency work and WordPress, Shopify. I think those are two great platforms to dive deeper into. I think a lot of people just they kind of fear that change. I fear that change. A lot of people fear that change. And there's only one way to overcome that. It's to do what you fear. And honestly, if you fear making a career move that excites you, but you don't think you can do it, that most likely is your next stepping stone in your career. You are going to grow significantly from facing that fear. And I got to touch on the fourth thing. And I'm sure some people just cringe when I talk about it, but I got to touch on it again because it's that important. It's soft skills. It's very easy to just meld into your culture and not branch outside, which, what I said before, you can go to meetups, you can go to conferences, you can put yourself out there in the dev community and engage with other people that, might not vibe with you the way that your company vibes with you, the way that your team vibes with you, or maybe you're just working with one other person on your team. It's going to be way different working with a whole team of developers with different personalities and way more shareholders maybe. And a lot of devs need to work on their social skills. It's just the truth. Don't get rusty with those. And it's easy to work on them. It's easy to get good with just talking with people. A lot of the times you are way less awkward than you think you are. But it just comes with a lot of repetition and saying a lot of stupid shit and putting yourself out there to just get a little bit more comfortable with conversation after conversation after conversation. And if this doesn't apply to you, you can ignore this. But, I think that this applies to a lot of people who need to just get more comfortable with the anxious thoughts that they have, both with changing and bettering themselves, but also meeting new people and making new connections that can help you make that happen. So I guess we went over 4 things today, but if you have anything else that you any other reasons why you think maybe you're stuck in your position or you see other developers getting stuck, definitely leave it in the comments below. I want to hear about it, but that's my advice for it. I hope it helps.